at what point did they need to get some help to bring in an HR consultant? And I guess the reason why I ask that question is because I think when I went from being a consultant for a very long time to setting up a business, it took me a long time to understand that the people that I was hiring didn't have the same passion for the business that I did. I was like, what do you mean? You don't want to work an extra 10 hours a week for nothing? Because that's what I do. And I guess, HR is a really difficult part of that, because it's really about understanding people and understanding their motivations and making sure it's very clear to them about what their job is and what the expectations are. And like you said, in a small business, that one person is often doing 10 things that aren't their job and 10 things that are their job. And, what would be your advice around your first hire, for example?
So there's a lot to unpack in that. So I'm going to break it down into a couple of different sections. First is, what do I hire first? And what I'm going to say to you is that if there are things that you can automate and you can automate them, once you write the email sequence once, it's automated. If there's a piece of work that it's the same, it's simple, it's not complex, the first purchase is actually borrowing some expertise to make sure your bots are really, really working for you. Get a little bit of investment in that area, because it's going to streamline the rest of your business. And the more time that you are spending on things that, I'm going to say it, are below your pay grade. If you are emptying your garbage bin, if you are the person who's picking up every single phone call, I want you to really have a look at that, because if that brings you out of high value work, it's not ideal for you or your business. So, think about what is below your pay grade. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, because the pieces of work that people love doing, I have somebody who answers our phones and they're amazing. That's great. That is their passion. Allow them to be the expert in their field and passionate about what they do. Find the things that are right for you to do and really focus on them. So getting rid of the bits that take you away from being the best version of your business, that's the first piece. The second piece you kind of asked about was in regards to, when do I bring them in? And I'm going to say, and lots of people balk at this, but probably before you really think you do. So one of the biggest things for us is when we go in, we often find that we're working with a business owner who has downloaded an employment agreement off the internet. It might only be 12 months old, but the law has changed in that time. And so we now have an employment agreement in place that actually has legal terms and conditions in it. Getting a little bit of help up front can save you a lot of time and effort later when you have to do those transitions and you have to negotiate with people. I'm sure you found in your industry as well that people come to you and there's not one thing, but they've got 5 pieces of software that are doing the same thing and then don't talk to each other. It's the same sort of thing. If we can just invest that little bit of extra money up front, it can make a big difference later. And I know that that's hard, but I would say if you're thinking about it and you're planning it out, start putting aside just a little bit of money to buy those luxuries, to borrow that expertise so that you get the platform to leverage your business successfully.
And what about when that person starts? Because I was listening to a podcast recently where that person said they hired people and they got that person to write the processes. So the person came in, the person writes the processes, what do you feel about that? Because I feel like I did that. If you're doing the build option, that's not really going to work, is it? Because they don't, if you're training them, then you're really the one that needs to be writing the processes. And when I talk about processes, from my perspective, it's obviously the tech processes, but from your perspective, it's the job description and the policies and procedures around working and the expectations.
So there's multiple different ways to do this, and there's no one right answer. But what the key ingredient in all of them is the right person is the one who's doing the double checking.
Yeah.
So as you said, if it's really complex and you've got to make sure you've got all the I's dotted and all the T's crossed, whether that's IT, HR, legal, then the right person to write the process may be the one with the most knowledge, but they might also be the one who's most time poor. So when I'm doing things, I will bring somebody new into the team. As part of my onboarding them, I will actually spend time with them and we will go through things, we'll record it, we'll video it. And so that video is there for them to use as a reference and a resource. Then I will have them write the process.
Yeah, okay.
But that process comes back to me and I'm the one who does the final double check.
Yeah.
And if I've written something into my version of the process that they don't have in theirs, I know there's a learning gap.
Yeah.
But then I'm only focused on that learning gap. I don't have to redo the whole training process.
Yeah.
This bit is where I focus.
Yeah.
So once again, that saves me time and it saves me effort and it stops them from switching off, because if I'm telling them the same thing 3 times and the first 20% they've nailed, but I'm going back over it, by the time I get to the next piece that I really want them to remember, they're zoned out.
Yeah.
Off with the pixies. So I'm just coming back into that piece that I really need them to be focused on. The second thing is that if I'm doing this well enough, I'll be able to see when my people are ready to train the next team of people who come through.
Yeah, nice. Yeah.
And then once again, the person who does the double check is either my senior person or me, to make sure that if my senior person maybe is not so good about delivering the training yet, I can coach them.
Yep.
But if the person themselves has maybe not understood some of it, I can provide a second way of looking at that same problem. So hopefully through that process, they're actually getting a different way of hearing the same information, which makes it cleaner, clearer, and gets us to the results that we need.
Yeah, amazing. And that